Hi, everyone. It's Miss Mary. I'm going to read a story today about Jim Thorpe, a very famous Native American in our lives, and the story about him from when he was young, and what are some things in his life that he did to become who he was. And it's called Bright Path by Don Brown. 9-year-old Jim Thorpe trotted the Oklahoma plains hunting raccoons. Yellow, brown, and green grassland seemed to unfurl endlessly in all directions. The land belonged to the Sac and Fox Indians, Jim's tribe. At his birth in 1888, he had been called Huck, which meant bright path. In time, Jim Thorpe would be called the world's greatest athlete. Summer or winter, Jim seemed to spend all of his time in the open. He hunted, stalking raccoons, tracking deer, or snaring quail in traps made of cornstalks. He played wild games with his friends, too. His favorite was Follow the Leader, where Jim and the other boys swam rivers, climbed trees, and dashed among the livestock. But life wasn't all games and hunting. His parents, Hiram and Charlotte, farmed, and Jim and his 4 brothers and sisters helped tend crops, feed livestock, and tame horses. Oh, despite the hard work, Jim found excitement in his chores. At 10, I could handle a lasso, he said. I like catching wild horses on the range. It was a great sport. Can you tell what a lasso is from the story? If asked, you'd probably had wished for outdoor days of play and work to unfurl as endlessly as the Oklahoma prairie. But at age 6, and his parents enrolled him in a school just for Indian children where he'd be taught to act and dress like white people. At that time, many people believed that the Indians' best future lay in pushing aside their culture. The school forced Jim to wear a dark suit and a black hat and prohibited him from speaking his Indian language. He followed a rigid schedule, lived in a dormitory, and played only games chosen by the school. Jim did not like it and often ran away. Once it was said, Jim scampered away moments after being delivered to school by his father and reached home before the older man arrived on horseback. Hoping that a more distant school would discourage his running away, Hiram sent 11-year-old Jim to another Indian school far away in Haskell, Kansas. Jim disliked the school too. Haskell was military strict, and the students even wore army style uniforms. Still, he stole moments of fun playing football with his friends using a crudely sewn leather ball stuffed with rags. At Haskell, Jim learned that his father had been injured. Without getting permission from the school, he raced for home, hopping a freight train to get there, but the train steamed off in the wrong direction, and young Jim had to spend 2 weeks tramping his way 270 miles back to Oklahoma. At home, he found his father recovered, but tragedy struck soon after when his mother fell ill and died. Hiram was now without help of his wife, causing Jim to give up school and work the farm with his father. But Hiram was a hard man with a hot temper, and he punished Jim for mistakes and forgotten chores. In 1901, he bullied his son once too often, and Jim fled. Young Thorpe, about 100 pounds and less than 5 feet tall, was 13 years old. He ran away to the Texas Panhandle where he fixed fence on a ranch and tamed wild horses. For several years afterward, Jim attended a nearby public school and played baseball with his friends on diamonds scratched from abandoned wheat fields. But Hiram saw an Indian school as the brightest hope for his son's future and placed Jim in one across the country in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. It was 1904. Nearly 1,000 Indian girls and boys were enrolled at Carlisle. Sioux, Chippewa, Oneida, Hopi, Inuit. Like Haskell, it was military strict. The boys wore army-style tunics and their long hair was cropped. Students followed an unbending routine of reading, writing, and arithmetic. Trades were taught too. Jim, cowboy and tamer of wild horses, found himself studying to be a tailor. The only real pleasure Jim found was in the pickup baseball and football games after class. During the summer, Jim and other Carlisle students were sometimes hired out to nearby farms. Jim cleaned house and tended to rows of vegetables. It was glum work, and Jim ran away in an offense that landed him for a time in the Carlisle guardhouse. The school had once been a military camp, used the dank room as a kind of jail for wayward boys. Oh, excuse me. Three years of schooling, tailoring, and hired out summers passed. His life seemed to be trapped in Carlisle like a quail in a cornstarch snare. Then, while watching Carlisle's track team practice one afternoon in 1907, Jim noticed that none of the high jumpers could clear the bar. I asked if I might try, he later said. I had a pair of overalls on, a hickory shirt, and looked like anything but a high jumper. While onlookers snickered, Jim approached the bar and cleared it on the first try, breaking the school high jump record. Astonished by Jim's casually achieved feat, Carlisle's coach, Pop Warner, drafted him onto the school's track team, and soon afterward the football team. With Pop's training, Jim blossomed into an astounding athlete. By 1912, he'd won track medals for dashes, hurdles, hammer throws, and shot put, and led a handful of other talented Carlisle athletes to victories over much larger schools. He also played minor baseball league in North Carolina, earning a few dollars a game. Jim and the Carlisle football squad defeated the best college teams of time: Harvard, Syracuse, Princeton, Nebraska, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania. On the football field, passes flew from Jim's hand with a snap of the wrist, and he scooped up spinning punts over the dead run. He skidded through defenses and shook off tacklers. He's a greyhound, spectators declared, a jackrabbit, a dynamo, a steam engine. Catching him was like trying to clutch a shadow, someone said. Then Jim won a place on a special American track team. The summer was 1912, and his teammates sailed to Stockholm, Sweden, where they met athletes from 28 nations, competing in the 5th Olympic Games. Jim entered the pentathlon, a grueling contest of jumping, javelin, as well as a 200-yard sprint, discus throwing, and a race nearly a mile. Few of the 30,000 spectators believed he'd succeed. No American was up to the task, they thought, and besides, Thorpe had never competed in a pentathlon before. Jim surprised the crowd and beat his competitors in 4 of the 5 events, winning the gold medal with a score that was never equaled. And just a week later, Jim challenged the world's most gifted athletes in the decathlon, a 10 event contest more punishing than a pentathlon. Muscles made nimble and fleet by his hardy Oklahoma child, and Carlisle sports now found their full strength in the 3 day contest. Jim scored third in the javelin throw and pole vault, and second in discus long jump and 100 and 400-meter dashes. He won the high jump, shot put, and long distance run, and a dash that forced the runners to clear hurdles as they ran. Jim Thorpe won the decathlon with a score that would stand for 20 years. As the onlooking crowd cheered themselves hoarse, perhaps Jim recalled the high jump he had made years earlier at Carlisle. There was something magical about that jump. On one side of the bar, Jim had been an Indian boy, unhappily struggling in an unfamiliar world, a boy with dim prospects. But on the other side, Jim Thorpe found the bright path to world fame. You are the greatest athlete in the world, the King of Sweden declared as he presented Jim with an Olympic gold medal. Thanks, King, Jim said. And that's the end of that. That's the end of his young life, as the bright path that he went on from what he struggled with and what he went through going to boarding schools and, at Carlisle, at Haskell, and one close to home in Oklahoma. And he just kept running away, but he enjoyed the sports. And he did great. Somebody saw his potential, especially after he made the high jump, and his life changed. And he's a great role model for many Native American children and adults. Thank you. This is a good book. So if you want to study more or learn more about Jim Thorpe, let us know, and we'll see what we can find. Have a great day.